It's certainly true that when you look at cooked food and you take, say, an alkaline vegetable, for example, and you start cooking that food, that you release compounds that are acidic in the cooking process. And so if you wanted to have the food in its optimum state, it's best to have it as fresh as possible, as organic as possible, in other words, grown the way nature intends, you know, with the microbes in the soil, with plenty of compost around and so forth, plenty of nutrients in there, and picked fresh and eaten fresh. You know, animals in the wild don't pick their food and leave it there for a week and then eat it later. They eat it while it's still growing, and for human beings that's the ideal for us as well. One of the detriments of cooking foods is that you certainly release things like acrylamides. I know when you cook potatoes over 100 degrees, for example, yeah, that's what you release, and they've been shown to be carcinogenic, so and leading to cancers and things. So you certainly you need to be careful with those. Other foods, certainly with the animal products, if you cook those, you end up with dietary AGE, advanced glycation end products, which also lead to cancers and problems like that. So cooking of any food certainly destroys the enzymes, also breaks down the compounds and turns them into a more carcinogenic substance that previously wasn't the case when it was in its raw state. Microwaving food's even worse again. When you're agitating the food at such a high frequency, you're releasing a whole range of other compounds that are even more toxic, and they found from studies of microwave food that's a lot worse than just cooking it in a conventional fashion. However, having said that, to put it into some sort of context, even to this day, and the longest living peoples in the world, many of them have whilst they have a large percentage of their diet is raw food, they also have some cooked food component in there as well. And the Okinawan's, a lot of people think that they eat a lot of fish. They do eat more fish than any other animal foods, but compared to the average American in terms of animal food consumption, they consume about 1/5 of the dietary animal protein compared to the average American, but can consume about 5 times the amount of vegetables by comparison. In fact, there was a documentary on the Okinawans, and the filmmakers were actually commenting about how much they seem to be just eating vegetables all the time, and they noticed that as a contrast. But they tend to cook a lot of their vegetables, but not overcooking them to the point where you're really destroying the food. But just simply having so many vegetables in the diet had a very positive effect. Broccoli, for example, doesn't lose a lot of its nutritional value when you steam it. You only lose maybe about 10 to 15% of it. Whereas something like capsicum, for example, you'd lose about 96%. So it really depends what food that you're actually looking at. With other foods, it's interesting when you've probably seen these studies where they look at things like lycopene from tomatoes, and they will say that your ability to have that into your bloodstream is increased through the cooking process. That may be true in one respect, but you're also missing out on a lot of the other benefits of having the raw food, which often don't get looked at when you're only looking at one thing in isolation. And what I would say to someone is, if that was your concern, it's better to have an extra tomato raw than just having one cooked tomato, because you believe that you're getting a lot more of those nutrients straight into your bloodstream. And there's more to look at with a food than just vitamins, just minerals, and just evaluating those. Fiber, for example, is a critical component. Fiber acts like a broomstick through your intestinal wall and taking out toxins. It's also polymorphic, which means that one molecule can pick up many other molecules of toxins. It can act like a sponge as well, mopping up acids. And so fiber is incredibly important in pulling acids out of the body and other toxins, and also cleaning the intestinal wall so that you can absorb your nutrients better as well. So there's so many benefits in raw foods in that respect.